Hey folks, it's time for another Rolling Stones review. And of course, my next album right here, right now, is Between the Buttons. This is probably one of my favorite. Come to think about it, this is actually a solid album. I really love this album. Because I hear a lot of the songs, I'm hearing a lot of different stuff. It feels like kind of like with the previous albums they kind of had, like how they were basically kind of doing the it probably wasn't until Aftermath, really, when they kind of found their niche a little bit. And of course, I love this album, I think, more than what I thought. um, well, Charlie Watts asked Andrew Luke Oldham, their producer or whatever, and asked him, hey, what is the next album going to be called? And he said, well, Between the Buttons. Between the Buttons is kind of like, a term meaning, I don't know, you know, I don't really have an idea. There's really, really nothing, you know, no title really, and it's undecided, let's just put it that way. Undecided, have no idea, that kind of thing. And in the US, it was the seventh album. It was released February the 11th of 1967. And the UK, they'll beat us though. It was their fifth studio album, and it was released over there January the 20th of that year. And went to number 3, and over here it went to number 2, and it hit gold. So it did really, really well. It's funny to think that the next day, in the United States, North America, the next day, Mick and Keith got busted for, the possession of drugs, marijuana at his place, I believe. So this album really was kind of like a document of that time period that they were kind of within at that time. To me, I think Aftermath was kind of a little bit of, spurts and whatever, little bits and pieces of, stuff that they were kind of experimenting with a little bit, especially with Brian Jones. And, at this time he was kind of feeling a little bit disappointed of the band, really. You don't hear so much electric on, he plays some electric on some tracks, but not so much. He plays a lot of different instruments. Let me go ahead and list off here. He does electric in the first track, the first track on the UK, Yesterday's Papers, and the other, Miss Amanda Jones on the electric, which he does really a fine job on that, I do believe. He does accordion, he does recorder, he does vibraphone, piano, on My Obsession, he has piano on that. Tambourine, he does tambourine on, let's see, Connection. So that's a really good, that one I actually kind of like. Then he has harmonica, that really classic harmonica on I think the 9th track, which is Who's Been Sleeping Here. And he does dulcimer, he does kazoo on She Smiles, or no, Cool Calm Collected. Tuba, trombone, trumpet, that kind of like, at the end, he kind of does that whole little vaudeville bit on the beginning there. So yeah, and another thing too, which really, really is interesting, is that there's not so much Bill on a couple of tracks, because Keith actually does some of the bass. He does bass on some songs, including Yesterday's Papers. He does bass on Connection, and he does, let's see, writing this down on here. Let's see, and he does She Smiles Sweetly, so he plays bass on that. And yeah, Bill does show up, he does show up on the rest of course, the album. Charlie Watts does maracas on, what was the track here? I think Complicated. I think he does maracas on that song. So yeah, very, and then of course you got Jack Nietzsche back again. Also does harpsichord. Ian Stu, man, poor Stu, can't really barely hear him in the mix. So this is a very interesting album for their period of time, and I think this is definitely one of those albums I kind of really like. You know what I mean? Because I feel like every song is so perfect. So they recorded. Basically, they were in 3 different studios at this time recording this album. August the 3rd through the 11th, they were at RCA Studios recording, I think, Let's Spend the Night Together, Ruby Tuesday, which of course were the big hits off of the North American album. IBC Studios and Olympic Studios, when they came back to do more recording for the album, November the 8th through the 26th of 1966. And the final recording was on December 13th of 66, and then and everything went from there. Brian Wilson, believe it or not, at RCA, Mick Jagger brought over Brian while they were doing their song "My Obsession," and apparently he likes that song, Brian Wilson. That's probably, he says, it's one of his favorites, I believe, from them. I was also reading on, I think, Rolling Stone magazine or whatever, interviews and whatever columns about Mick Jagger's his thought on this album, and he said clearly it's kind of a little bit disappointing. He didn't really like how some of the songs were recorded, and perhaps it's a little bit messy at times. Like, he kind of felt like it was kind of, he doesn't really like this album so much, so I don't know. So the photographer was the same photographer, Jared Manquats. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that name right. Did the same. He did the album cover for Out of Our Heads. They took this at Promise Hill on North London. It's pronounced Primrose Hill, I believe. Hoping I'm pronouncing that right. 5:30 a.m. in the morning when they took this picture, and you definitely tell they don't look very. I guess you got Keith there. It's kind of like, hey, And, for what I was reading too, they thought Brian was kind of goofing off a little bit, so they were kind of like, kind of a bit mad that Brian was kind of making that face, and then Charlie, and then he's got the 2 buttons, between the buttons, if you will, and then Bill is just kind of like, this was kind of like at the time where they were recording some stuff at that time. I think it was in Olympic Studios at this time, because it was taken in November, so they probably were at Olympic Studios at this time. And on the back is the famous rhyming, if you will, cartoon of Charlie Watts. Here, let me read it here. It's quite funny. To understand this little rhyme, you must tap your foot in time. Then the buttons come much nearer, and the stones you see more clearer. And of course, I just love that, man. It's so funny. How can you not love that? That's great. Okay. At this time too, Andrew Luke Oldham had just released for the Rolling Stones their first ever live album, Got Live If You Want It, at the time. And that was released on December the 10th of 66. Also, this album was recorded on 4-track, believe it or not. And this would be his last produced album before their Satanic Majesties. So this was kind of it for the Stones, really. This album, and then they got busted, and then, they were kind of doing a little bit of recording while, Mick and Keith weren't, they did a little bit of recording for their Satanic Majesties. So it wasn't until it was a big, long stretch of basically nothing, really. And at the time that Mick and Keith were in, prison, really, was when they were doing the songs for that album. And then of course they did Dandelion and We Love You. So after this album, they released the compilation Flowers, which I'll show you at the end of the review. But before this album came out, in September, they had released Have You Seen Your Mother Baby Standing in the Shadows? They were on the Ed Sullivan Show, actually on this day. I'm recording it right now, 9/11, can you believe that? September the 11th of 66, that's when they did that song. Of course, they had released Mother's Little Helper at that time. And of course, they came back to the Ed Sullivan Show in January of '67 to do Let's Spend the Night Together. And of course, was changed to Let's Spend Some Time Together because, they thought it was offensive. And then, of course, their big hit, Ruby Tuesday. So anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So the first track on here is Let's Spend the Night Together. Great song, great opening track. And, I forgot to mention, too, about the photo. The camera lens was, there was Vaseline on the camera lens. So it kind of gives it the druggy feel of that period of time, So, that was a little interesting factor. But anyways, Let's Spend the Night Together. It was recorded in RCA, December 1966, released January the 13th, the same day as Ruby Tuesday. It was the B-side, well, double A side. Unfortunately, this went to number 55, while Ruby Tuesday was at number 1. It was their, let's see, can't get no satisfying. So it was like their 4th number 1 hit. So yeah, I love this song. This is great. I love the ba 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 ba. It's got that really bouncy, upbeat, vaudeville piano. It's just a straight up rocker. I mean, Mick's vocals is absolutely, great. And at the end, Mick's like, so come on now, ba 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 ma 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 ma. It's excellent. It's gets you on your feet a little bit. So yeah, who doesn't love this song? This has always been one of my favorite Rolling Stones songs. Indeed, of course. And then we get the second track, Yesterday's Papers, which opened up the UK. And of course, the UK, they had a couple of the tracks from the Flowers album, the Flowers compilation. Backstreet Girl and I think Please Go Home. Those 2 tracks were on that, the UK. But Yesterday's Papers, this has a similar, the drumming, the rhythmic drumming a little bit, has the same rhythm, percussion as Sunshine Superman by Donovan, which of course was the number 1 hit for him. I like this song. It's very Baroque. There is no Bill, apparently. No Bill. This is Keith playing bass here. Tremolo guitar by Brian. And the doo-doos. I like the doo-doos on there. So yeah. Yeah, this is really good. I really like this. This is them kind of dabbling once again into that sort of experimental phase there. Then we get the next song, Ruby Tuesday, the big number 1 hit. It was their 4th number 1 hit. It was recorded on the same day as Let's Spend the Night Together, and of course was number 1 in February of that year. I really love this song. It's got the piccolo. It's got the, I really love that. She would never say where she came from, and it's like that beautiful piano. I think that was done by. I want to say that was done by Keith. Beautiful piano. This is perhaps somebody's ex-wife. I don't know if it was Keith's ex-wife or somebody's ex-wife or whatever. And of course, there's the restaurant, Ruby Tuesday. This is like straight out of the book of the greatest Rolling Stones songs of that period of time. And I just love that song. It's great. It's got a nice hook to it, and the drumming too, boo boo boom boom boom. And kind of at the end, it kind of sounds a little distorted when the boom 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 boom, like Charlie's pounding drumming there. Yeah, I mean it's a perfect one of a kind Rolling Stones song, right? Then we got the next song, Connection. I like the piano, I like the tambourine. I think that was done by Mick Jagger. And of course, the piano and tambourine during the intro comes in time. It's very uplifting. I really like it. Of course, the bass is done by Keith. Let's see what else I wrote on here. Let's see. Harmonica. There's harmonica here by Mick Jagger, which is actually really good. And I like the piano done by Keith. Like I said, he also plays bass on here. Let's see. Tambourine. I think there was also tambourine done by Brian and Mick on this track. So it's a very good track. I really like it, Then we get the next song, She Smiles Sweetly. I like that beginning, the intro. Um, it's got like some sort of like really deep organ played by Brian Jones. Nice piano, a beautiful piano done by Keith here. He plays bass once again on here, and I like his style of bass. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit it's a bit more of his style than Bill's. You know what I mean? It's got a really nice, good organ ending a little bit on here too. She smiles sweetly. It's just like beautiful. It's got like some beautiful, just swaying hook that I love about this song. And great, we move on now to the last track on side one. Cool, calm, and collected. Cool, calm, collected. This is like one of my favorites on here. It's got like that, like that, some sort of like really cool, you got a whole bunch of stuff on here. You got like the kazoo done by Brian Jones. Mixed, like I said, mixed vocals great on here. It's almost got like a bar room kind of style. It's almost like a bar room going out of control. Everyone's all like, going insane. Like everyone's going nuts. It definitely picks up like once the break, the break comes in and stuff. And I think it's just a funny song. Keith, of course, is doing that electric, on the song. Let's see. You also got the kazoo on here, and he also plays dulcimer. I think that is the dulcimer, I believe. I don't think it's not so much the guitar. Bill is actually back on here. And of course you got Jack Nietzsche. He plays piano on here as well. Yeah, it's a fun song. I like it. And then it gets a little bit out of control. It starts going really fast paced. And then at the end everyone's all laughing and kind of like, saying, hey, we did it. We did the song, and that's that, It's fun, it's got the cool vibe to it. It's got the, what the Stones were kind of doing at that time, And then we get side two, All Sold Out. I really love the cool, it's almost got like a, I don't know what you would call it, but it's got a cool drum beat to it by Keith, or not Keith. Actually, the bass drum, there's actually a song on here. Mick actually plays bass drum on, let's see, I'm trying to remember now, Connection, which I remember hearing when I was listening to the album. I'm like, oh, I hear a little bit of that bass drum. But anyways, All Sold Out. It's got that raunchy guitar, Keith style, kind of like a little bit fuzzy at times. It's basically a straight up rocker, if you will, blending in that, what they kind of did on Aftermath. There's some sort of songs that sounded like that a little bit. But I like it. It's definitely a cool rocker, kind of obscured one that you don't really hear as often, but I like it. Then of course you get My Obsession. This is a really great one. Let's see what I wrote on here. Okay, so you got the classic Charlie drumming on here. There's a lot of a couple, and there's one that definitely sounds a bit like I think it's Complicated, I believe. He's got the drum beat kind of like on Good Off My Cloud a little bit. This one he's got some sort of thing going on, but a very muddy electric guitar by Keith. Piano is done by Brian here. It almost has like, my obsession, your obsession. It's got like some sort of really just upbeat, kind of like, whoa, like it's kind of really, it's kind of almost exciting at times. And it's kind of, interesting at that time period of the Stones there. And I really kind of like what they were kind of doing here, kind of being a little bit more, And then we get the next track on here called Who's Been Sleeping Here. It's very, it kind of comes in very slow. Harmonica, the harmonica does show up on here, played by Brian Jones, and it sounds a little bit like Dylan. It almost has a Dylan harmonica feel. Like, if you hear it, it almost sounds like something that Bob Dylan could have done or whatever, but very bright piano. This time is done by Jack Nietzsche. Definitely hear him on here. Electric by Keith. He does really great on here. He talks about Goldilocks and stuff, and he kind of keeps on going and going. Let's see. Trying to see what else I kind of on here. And of course, Stu. I hear a little bit of Ian Stewart in there, but Jack's kind of overshadowing him a little bit. But yeah, this is very interesting. It's kind of slow, a little bit slow. It's got some sort of groove going, but yeah, it's a good song. Then we get Complicated. This is really good, and in fact, I can't believe I just heard that when Mick, he kind of says in the ending verse or whatever, she doesn't give a damn, like, just, oh man, like, he really just, I guess he really meant that. Nice fuzzy fuzz, good electric guitar by Keith. Great opening by Charlie, the Get Off My Cloud, the basic, he's got that, the caveman, feeling around here. It's got like that whistling organ, by Brian, and I put down here very psychedelic at times. It kind of does, it definitely got some sort of psychedelic feeling, which I do kind of like, and I think it's good. And then Mick yells out break, and everyone kind of goes out, and Keith does his solo or whatever. There's a little solo bit on there, but yeah, this is kind of interesting. They're trying to change up a little bit here. Then we get Miss Amanda Jones. Nice electric, raunchy electric here by Keith once again. He does a really nice solo. I call this a boogie woogie Stones tune. This is them really just being kind of like the old style of the Stones, if you will. Miss Amanda Jones, round and Miss Amanda Jones. Like, it's so cool. Like, Mick's got that really cool, that vocal approach that he's got there, and it's really interesting. Yeah, so it's just categorized, the song definitely categorizes them as their earlier time, And then we get the last song, which definitely is just like a complete 180 to me, is Something Happened to Me Yesterday. This was basically Keith saying like, hey, I went on my first acid trip, so I'll write a song about, how it felt or whatever. This definitely sounds like, the songs, Dedicated Follower Fashion or Well Respected Man, the Kinks. It definitely has that Kinks vibe, if you will. Very Kinks-like, with the whole vaudeville trombones and stuff, which of course is done by Brian, the trumpet trombone intro. I really like it. It's kind of interesting. And this is actually Keith's first lead vocal, or not lead vocal, but his, co-lead, if you will, co-vocal or whatever. It almost has like, oh, interesting, like, kind of, it kind of ponders you a little bit, like, oh, Keith with a vocal bit. There's some whistling, I believe that was done by Keith. Something very groovy happened to me, like, and then it just kind of goes on the somber note. It's got like violins, and it almost has a little bit of a Beatles, like a little bit of a, Sgt. Pepper or whatever vibe to it. So we got Beatles and Kinks kind of mixed in there a little bit, Then there's some violin that kind of makes the song a little bit sad, like, and then Mick's kind of like saying this, he's like saying, goodbye, everybody, alrighty, goodbye, I hope everyone enjoys this, if you will, kind of like this, almost like this sad note or whatever. And, he also says, I want to also thank my Richard, or whatever, our producer, this sort of thing, but, it was Andrew, but I don't know, I guess he was, joking or whatever, like, oh, Richard, thank you, Richard, So it kind of goes on a little bit of a sad note, kind of, if you will, and And that's the ending. Um, quite quite a sad ending really to this album, but I definitely love this to start to finish. I think this is great. This is actually the UK cover, and these two on the US, North American, that we all know and well, were shown up on each side of the corners here. And for the buttons, the two buttons here by Charlie, it kind of fades a little bit, and it's a little bit more, I think it's a little bit more brighter. This is a little bit more darker. This came from the box set, you know. Um, so I don't know why they didn't put in the US version, because they decided to put, you know, the Flowers compilation, which also included, you know, 2 tracks from the UK of, you know, that, and the 2 tracks from the US for Flowers, you know, which I can't wait to review, you know. It's a very interesting time period, you know. It was kind of like, oh, like, you know, we don't know what to even expect, but who knows, like, hey, you know, something might happen. And, you know, fortunately it did, you know. Once the North American Between the Buttons came out, it was kind of like, oh, like, you know, Mick and Keith, just to think, if they didn't get busted, like if they kind of kept on going, and, you know, maybe perhaps they could have, you know. Also in September of '66, they also did their last tour in the UK, and it wasn't until like the next 4 or 5 years, I believe, when they came back, you know, in 1971. So it was kind of a bit of a sad thing to really think, like, people in the UK to get to see Brian Jones like one last time, kind of thing. It's kind of almost like with the Beatles, you know, where they kind of, you know, '66, that was kind of their last tour, and, you know, and no one didn't really, you know, that was kind of it, you know what I mean? That was kind of the last, really the last period there. An interesting time, and I can't wait to review Flowers, the compilation. Um, Favorite album, definitely start to finish. And, all right, folks, until then, thank you. Take care.